Hey everybody, it's Eddie with Kaylor here with a PSA about a question I get asked a lot. Can you use locking tuners in place of a locking nut? The short answer is yes, with some caveats. Now I'll be talking specifically in the context of how this relates to our Kaylor bridges, but the truth is that it's applicable for every single guitar there is out there. Now, the very first thing that we need to clarify is, are we talking about something with a locking nut or something with the Kaylor string lock? This Jeff Hanneman ESP has a locking nut. This takes everything after it to the tuners out of the equation. For this to work correctly, a shelf must be cut for it to sit on properly. Now on this Lita Ford BC Rich Warlock, we have a Kaylor string lock. The entire purpose of this is to lock the strings and not to have to cut that precision shelf for a locking nut. The strings go directly to the string lock. After it's locked, they can go wanging out any way that they want, and it doesn't matter. You can really see that on the low E. Now this is what you want, for the string to be in a straight line until it's locked. Then it can do whatever the hell it wants. Now that straight pull is crucial, whether you're using a Kaylor string lock or locking tuners. Let me show you something where it's not quite so good. Here we have a Gibson Les Paul, and these things are notorious for tuning instability. And on this particular one, it's even worse. Now this is the original nut, and these slots are cut in an angle, which is correct for the guitar. But if you have the pull not being straight to the string lock, then all of a sudden you're going to have binding, and that is going to give you tuning instability guaranteed. And just because it's here, this is the Kaylor String Lock Pro. This thing's pretty cool, although misunderstood, because you just tighten it with your finger and it works on a cam just like so many other Kaylor things. And you just feel that click. Now you're locked in place. So if your headstock has the strings going off at crazy angles all over the place and you use a whammy bar, you'll do a lot better with either a locking nut or a string lock. The nut material and the slots themselves are also extremely important. For locking tuners or the Kaylor string lock, it's really important to have something that's self-lubricating at a molecular level. I prefer the Graphtec Tusk nuts. Shout out to Graphtec. Not only do you want to have nice straight string pull, but those slots have to be properly polished. Now you can achieve good results with bone and brass as long as it's done right and lubed up properly. If you don't know what I mean by that, just Google the pencil trick for a guitar nut. Next, we'll talk about headstock angle. If it's flat like this Fender Strat, what you'll want is graduated locking tuners. You see right there that they pull the strings down against the nut, in this case, the LSR roller nut, which I highly recommend you stay away from. But the angle is good because of the graduated locking tuners. Now, in the case of a guitar like this Ibanez Destroyer 2, the headstock is at an angle, so you wouldn't want to use graduated tuners. You already have the string pulling against the nut, and the graduated locking tuners would just kind of be redundant. So far, here's what we got. A nice straight string pull from the nut directly to the tuner. The angle is being taken care of either by a graduated locking tuner or by the headstock angle. And the material of the nut is something like a graphite nut or a properly lubed up brass or bone nut. Okay, here's the thing. The next part has a lot of controversy involved. So much controversy, in fact, that I will not engage in any angry comments. And now, on to the controversy. Locking tuners are not supposed to have any wraps on them. Yeah, I know. Paul Reed Smith, well, they will put like one entire wrap on these things. And you know what? They can do whatever they want. They're Paul Reed Smith. Me personally, when I get these things and I restring them, I fix them. At least my definition of fixed. Now, it turns out I'm not the only person that feels this way. Ned Steinberger, yes, that Ned Steinberger, the one who designed the NS Spectre, the one who revolutionized headless instruments in the 80s, and just all around genius of a guy, came up with these. The D'Addario Planet Waves locking tuners. This is such a clever thing because when you put the string in and get it all the way through, lock it down, now you've got the string in there, and as you start tightening the thing, it'll cut the string so you can't have a wrap. See? Ah, yes, Ned Steinberger, just like Leo Fender, Nathan Daniel, and even Gary Kaylor. Absolute genius of an innovator when it comes to guitars. Can't play a freaking note. One thing I want to say about guitar strings is that they're little itty bitty cables, and I got a lot of experience with cables from my career as a commercial deep sea diver for 25 years. Every single time that we would re-spool anchor cable, when we would be at those very first wraps, we'd spray paint a line across all of the wraps, and then we would go out, drop anchors, stretch them out just like you stretch guitar strings, and then come back up and pick up the anchor. And you know what? Those lines never, ever, ever wind up ever again. And the reason is because cables stretch. So less wraps, less stretch, more stability. But hey, you don't have to listen to me. I'm not your dad. Now, one thing you might notice as you're stringing up your locking tuners, trying your damnedest to not have one full wrap on any of them, is that some of them will actually go a little bit further with the wrap than others. And that's because usually all of your tuners are going to be the same gear ratio. 18:1 is pretty common. And that is why Graphtec came out with these, the ratio locking tuners. So once again, Graphtec, I like the cut of your jib. Now, with all this being said, you will lose some travel if you go the locking tuner route instead of a locking nut or a string lock. And this is actually an excellent time to talk about the difference between a double locking fulcrum and the Kaylor Cambridge. Now, with the double locking fulcrum, your string is locked off in two places, hence double locking. Clever, right? So basically, what we have is a string that's one length because it's locked here at the saddle and here at the nut. Technically, these things are called the witness points. And there are two, saddle and nut. If you dive the bar or if you pull up on the bar, it makes no difference. That string is always the same length, and that's all there is to it. Here's where the Kaylor Cambridge is completely different. While it is still locked at the nut, or maybe a string lock just behind the nut, down here at the saddle, it is not locked. And in fact, we have a roller here, so we have all that extra string. There's a trade-off, and the trade-off is that you have less travel, but at the same time, this string is not one length. So when you dive it, you're actually making the string longer, and when you pull up, you're actually making the string shorter. That roller witness point encourages the harmonic to be completely and totally ripped apart, and it is begging for mercy the entire time. That kind of roar cannot be duplicated on a double locking fulcrum, even the ones we make. One more thing to let you guys know who are not familiar with the Cambridge is that because the saddle and the cam are completely independent of each other, you cannot bend this thing sharp by palm muting, no matter how hard you chug. It just can't be done. But with all that being said, none of it is as important as this one point. Both systems are extremely stable so long as you take the time to set them up correctly. And when I say setup, I'm not just talking about the bridge. I mean everything from the tip of the headstock to the tuner button on the very end, the truss rod, the neck angle, the intonation, the balance of the bridge, the whole enchilada. If even one thing is out, then the guitar will not perform up to its optimum potential. And that is a source of great frustration. But I'm willing to bet that most of you guys actually want to see what I mean by you will lose travel if you are using locking tuners instead of a locking nut or a string lock. So I'm going to show you how. First thing you do is you get yourself a guitar with a locking nut. Now what you're going to want to do is dive that thing and see how flippity floppity those strings get there. And yep, that is a typical Floyd Rose. They are just floppy as floppy can be. So now what we'll do is unlock this thing. We don't have to take the pads all the way off. We'll just make sure that it's loose. We'll get this thing back here and dive it again. And boy, oh boy, that's not nearly the flop that it was before. We have lost travel because we have actually added length up here, and that's actually a lot of length. So it does reduce the travel significantly. But don't take my word for it. Try it at home. Try it for yourself. You will see I am not exaggerating. You lose travel if you're not locked at the nut. For many people, they don't care if they lose travel. In fact, a lot of people just want that locking nut gone because, let's face it, it is a little bit of a pain to deal with, way more than a fixed bridge, which is why so many people will block this thing, or they'll make it dive only. Well, just taking the pads off is no solution. You know, you've still got this metal right here. The witness point is not exactly slippery or anything like that if you do want to dive it. So, you know, what's the solution? You can't just put a nut here. We got that shelf cut. GraphTech to the rescue. You get the nice slipperiness of GraphTech's self-lubricating at a molecular level, and it is designed to go right onto that shelf where your locking nut was. I'm kind of wondering when this turned into a GraphTech video because I do work for Kaylor. A really important thing for you guys all to realize is that most tuning instability actually does start at the nut, regardless of what kind of nut you have. And in the case of a locking nut, oftentimes, if you're having real problems and you just can't figure it out because you've done everything, was the locking nut itself rattling around? Do you need to tighten up the locking nut screws? It's a good thing to take a look at, and it's something that most people just don't even think about. Okay, let's bring this all together with a quick recap, shall we? First, we want to have a properly cut nut. Smooth, polished slots. We want that nut to be made out of self-lubricating material like a GraphTech tusk or lubed up bone or brass. No plastic, just don't. Straight string pull, no binding in the nut. Correct string angle from either an angled headstock or graduated tuners. No unnecessary wraps on the tuner post. Locking tuners are designed to have one clean clamp. Remember, strings are cables. More wraps equals more stretch equals more tuning problems. So less stretch, more stability. And once again, all that goes out the window if the guitar is not set up properly. However, Kaylor is here to help. Sign up for our mailing list and you can immediately download our PDF on how to make any guitar or bass play great regardless of the bridge. We will not sell or rent your information, just like everybody says. In addition to that, we won't clog up your inbox with a bunch of crap. It'll all be useful, pertinent stuff. And if you got some value out of this, why don't you go ahead, give us a like, hit that little notification bell, subscribe, share with your friends, all these other things so that you and everybody else you know can have a nice, stable guitar, because we will be doing more things like this in the future, including full setups of every kind of bridge there is, even a Floyd Rose. So until next time, this has been Eddie for Kaylor, helping you make your guitar the best it can be.